Arab widower begged motorcyclists to arrest him. The impossible happened. "Please arrest me right now," the trembling voice echoed through the noisy bar where the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club was having dinner after a long day on the road. 12 bikers turned simultaneously to find a middle-aged man, too thin, wearing worn clothes and with sunken eyes that hadn't seen sleep in days. "I am a criminal and I deserve to go to prison." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the music in the background seemed to dim. "Name," ordered Jax Thompson, the club's president, a black man nearly 6 feet tall with tribal tattoos covering both muscular arms. His voice was deep, accustomed to command, but there was genuine curiosity in it. "Tariq al-Rashid," the man replied, his Middle Eastern accent evident. 47 years old. "Civil engineer, or I used to be." His hands trembled as he pulled something from his pocket, an American military ID card and a small plastic bag containing medication. "I stole this from a pharmacy today. Insulin. For my daughter." Hawk, the club's vice president with burn scars on the left side of his face, stood up slowly. "How much did the insulin cost?" $3.40 a vial, Tariq whispered, tears beginning to stream down his face. "She needs 2 a month. I don't have anything else." Jax exchanged glances with his companions. They had all seen desperation before, but there was something different here. "When did you last eat?" Tariq counted on his trembling fingers. "Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days. But Lena, my daughter, she ate yesterday. I got bread from a bakery that was throwing it away." "How old is your daughter?" asked Diesel, the mechanic of the group. 9. Tariq's voice broke completely. "Type 1 diabetes since she was 6. My wife, Nadia. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. The treatments consumed everything: savings, house, insurance. Now I work where I can, but it's not enough. It's never enough." Hawk noticed something crucial: the military ID card. "Did you serve?" Sergeant Tariq al-Rashid, Army Corps of Engineers. Iraq, Afghanistan. 2 tours. Built bridges, roads, infrastructure. He laughed bitterly. "I built entire cities for other people. I can't keep a roof over my own daughter's head." Jax knew that story personally. His own father had served in Vietnam and returned to a country that treated him as invisible. Veterans forgotten by the system that promised to take care of them, especially veterans who didn't fit the profile America wanted to celebrate. "Where's your daughter now?" Jax asked, his voice suddenly softer. Fear crossed Tariq's face. "In the apartment. Alone. I told her I'd be back in 2 hours. It's been 5. He glanced at the cheap watch on his wrist. "She's afraid of the dark. And I can't go back without getting arrested because in prison at least they feed me 3 times a day and someone will take better care of her than I can." That devastating logic, the same logic hungry children use, coming from a desperate father, hit every man at that table like a punch in the stomach. Jack stood up, his commanding presence filling the space. "What's the address?" "Why?" Tariq instinctively backed away. "Because no 9-year-old should be alone in the dark, afraid. And because before we lock you up, we're going to follow the proper protocol." Jax gestured to the waitress. "Every criminal is entitled to a last meal. It's the law. Bring the biggest plate you have. And pack some food for a child, too." While Tariq devoured food for the first time in days, Hawk was already on the phone. "Ghost, I need information on a Tariq al-Rashid, Army veteran, civil engineer. I want to know why the hell a decorated sergeant is robbing pharmacies to keep his daughter alive." Within 10 minutes, Ghost had everything. What he found out made every biker's blood boil. Tariq wasn't just fighting poverty. He was fighting a system that had systematically robbed him, and the person responsible had a name, an address, and a history that made it all even worse. If you've ever felt the crushing weight of not being able to protect those you love most, you know that sometimes true heroes come from the most unexpected places. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what these bikers discovered and did in the next few hours would prove that true justice doesn't come from uniforms or courts, but from men who refuse to turn their backs when they come face to face with injustice. Ghost hung up the phone and walked over to the table where Tariq was still eating with the hunger of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be full. "I found something interesting, Jax. Very interesting." Jax motioned for him to continue. Tarek worked as an engineer at Davidson Construction for 8 years. Excellent record, multiple promotions. 3 years ago, the company won a $4.2 million federal contract to build a bridge. Tarek was the lead engineer on the project. And, Hawk leaned forward. The project was completed 6 months ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget. He should have received a $50,000 performance bonus, according to his contract. He never received it. Ghost paused significantly. 2 weeks after completing the project, he was fired. Official reason: budget cuts. Tarek stopped eating, the fork trembling in his hand. How do you know this? Continue, Jax ordered Ghost, ignoring Tarek's question. The owner of Davidson Construction is Richard Davidson. 52 years old, 3rd generation in the family business. There are records of 3 previous labor lawsuits in the last 5 years, all from immigrant or minority employees. All were settled out of court with confidentiality agreements. Let me guess, Diesel said bitterly. He fires people just before he has to pay them bonuses or higher benefits. Exactly. Ghost passed his phone around showing photos. And here's the interesting part. Davidson just bought a $1.8 million house in an exclusive neighborhood, a month after firing Tarek. Jax turned to Tarek. Why didn't you sue? Tarek laughed humorlessly. With what money? My wife was in the 3rd stage of cancer. I needed every penny for treatments. Davidson knew that. He offered me $5,000 to ease my transition. I accepted because Nadia needed chemotherapy. He stole $50,000 from you when you needed it most, Hawk said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. It wasn't just the money, Tarek continued, his voice breaking. He spread rumors in the industry. He said I had made structural errors in the design. No other engineering firm would hire me. I had to take basic construction jobs, cleaning, anything. Then Nadia died, and the insurance. Her insurance had a clause I didn't understand. They denied full coverage. Jax felt the familiar anger rising in his chest, the same anger he felt when he saw powerful men systematically destroying vulnerable people who didn't have the resources to fight back. Do you have documentation of your original contract? Hawk asked. I have copies at home. I kept everything. Tarek wiped away his tears. But lawyers cost money I don't have. And Davidson has expensive lawyers who told me that fighting would be financially detrimental to my already precarious situation. It was a veiled threat. Diesel slammed his fist on the table. So this son of a bitch steals a veteran's bonus, ruins his reputation, and now lives in a mansion while a decorated sergeant steals medicine to keep his daughter alive? Seems to sum it up pretty well, Ghost confirmed. Jax remained silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on Tarek. He had seen this story many times, wealthy white men exploiting immigrant workers and minorities because they knew the system was on their side. But this time would be different. I'm done eating, Tarek said quietly. You can take me to the police now. Not yet, Jax replied. First, we're going to get your daughter. No 9-year-old should spend another minute alone in fear. Then, we're going to get your documentation back. And then, he smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. We're going to have a much-needed conversation with Mr. Davidson. You don't understand, Tarek protested. He has money, lawyers, connections. I'm just a decorated sergeant who served his country and was robbed by a white-collar thief, Jax interrupted. And we are 12 men who don't care about money, lawyers, or connections when we see injustice. Hawk pulled out his phone. I know someone who'll want to hear this story. Rebecca Chen, labor rights attorney. She loves taking down corrupt businessmen, especially those who exploit veterans. And I know an investigative journalist, Diesel added. If Davidson has a pattern of behavior, that's gold for an exposé. Tarek looked from one man to the other, incredulous. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Jack stood up, placing a heavy hand on Tarek's shoulder. Because men like Davidson count on the idea that people like you are too alone, too desperate, too scared to fight back. They bet on the silence of their victims. He gestured to his fellow bikers. But you're not alone anymore. And Mr. Davidson is about to learn that robbing a veteran, especially in front of people who won't tolerate that shit, was the most expensive mistake of his life. What Richard Davidson didn't know, as he slept comfortably in his $1.8 million mansion, was that his empire built on systematic exploitation was about to collapse, not because of courts or laws, but because he had made the fatal mistake of stealing from the wrong man in front of the wrong people, and those people had resources, connections, and a relentless determination to ensure that justice was served in a way that no expensive lawyer could prevent. Lena Al-Rashid was cowering in the corner of the dark apartment when she heard the sound of engines roaring outside. Her first instinct was to hide even further, but then she heard her father's voice. "Lena Habibti, it's me." The door opened to reveal Tariq accompanied by 12 giant men in leather jackets. The girl recoiled, frightened, but Tariq immediately embraced her. It's okay now." Jax knelt down to her level. "Hi, Lena. Your father told us you like pizza. We brought 3. The girl's eyes widened when she saw the boxes Diesel was carrying. "Really? Really?" Jax smiled genuinely for the first time that night. "And ice cream too." While Lena ate, Tariq gathered his documentation, the original contract, emails with Davidson, project records, all meticulously organized in a folder he had kept for years, believing it would never be of any use. Hawk photographed each page. "Rebecca is going to love this." Signed contract specifying performance bonuses with clear metrics. Email from Davidson congratulating the project in advance. Termination notice 2 weeks later. "This is legal gold." "There's something else here," Ghost said, flipping through additional documents. "Tariq, do you have financial records for the company?" "Some. They were public because it was a federal contract." "Why?" Ghost showed them to Jax. "Because Davidson declared the project costing the full budget in federal records, but it actually came in $200,000 under. He pocketed the difference." "That's federal fraud," Hawk hissed low. "Even better," Jax said. "Tariq, you stay here with Lena. Hawk, Diesel, you stand guard. The rest of you come with me." At 11:47 p.m., 8 motorcycles pulled up in front of Richard Davidson's mansion. The lights were still on in the second-floor office. Jax rang the doorbell politely. A middle-aged woman in a silk robe answered, clearly irritated. "It's almost midnight. What do you want?" "To talk to Richard Davidson about money he owes a war veteran," Jax replied calmly. "My husband doesn't owe anyone anything. Get off my property or I'll call the police." "Please do," Jax said. "I'm sure the police will want to know about the $200,000 in federal funds that have disappeared." The color drained from the woman's face. "How did you?" "Richard," she shouted into the house. "You need to come down here. Now." Richard Davidson descended the stairs with the arrogance of someone accustomed to intimidating people. Until he saw 8 motorcyclists in his entryway. "Who the hell are you?" "Friends of Tariq Al-Rashid," Jax replied. "Remember him? The engineer you fired 3 years ago just before paying his $50,000 bonus." Davidson tried to maintain his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. Now get out or what?" Ghost stepped forward. "You're going to call your lawyers? Fine. In the meantime, you'll want to hear what the federal prosecutor has to say about you defrauding government contracts." Davidson's face turned pale. "We don't think so," Jax continued. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay Tariq the $50,000 you owe him, plus an additional $50,000 for emotional distress. That's $100,000. Wire transfer, tomorrow at 9 a.m. This is extortion." Davidson shouted. "No," a female voice cut through the air. An Asian woman in a suit walked through the still open door. "This is a labor compensation agreement. I'm Rebecca Chen, attorney. I will be representing Mr. Al-Rashid in a lawsuit for wrongful termination, wage theft, and defamation." She threw a briefcase on the coffee table. "I have complete documentation of the contract, emails, and witnesses willing to testify about your pattern of exploiting immigrant employees. I also have preliminary evidence of federal fraud." "My wife has nothing to do with this," Davidson tried to protest. "Actually," Rebecca smiled coldly, "as co-owner of the company, she has everything to do with it. Unless you'd rather settle this civilly." Davidson's wife turned to him, fury in her eyes. "Richard, what have you done?" "I can explain." "Explain how we bought this house," she cut him off. "Explain where the money came from when you said the company was struggling." Jax watched the marriage fall apart in real time. "You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Wire $100,000 to Tarek's account, or Rebecca files the full suit, civil, and assists in the federal criminal investigation." Davidson tried one last desperate gambit. "What if I refuse? I can drag this through the courts for years." "You can try," Rebecca said. "But in the meantime, I've already sent preliminary information to 3 investigative journalists. By tomorrow afternoon, your reputation will be destroyed. Every company you work with will want distance. Every client will question every project you've touched." Ghost held up his phone. "And I've posted your story on veterans forums. Do you know how many veterans work in construction in this city? Good luck finding skilled workers from now on." Davidson looked around, realizing he was completely cornered. No legal way out, no social way out, no financial way out. "You have 9 hours to decide," Jax said, turning to leave. 9 hours to do the right thing or lose everything. Your choice. The bikers rode off in formation, engines roaring in the quiet night of the wealthy neighborhood. Behind them, they could hear Davidson and his wife screaming. At 8:47 a.m. the next morning, $100,000 was transferred to Tariq al-Rashid's account. At 9:15 a.m., Rebecca Chen filed a formal complaint with the U.S. Attorney's Office about irregularities in Davidson Construction's government contracts. At 10:30 a.m., the first news article was published: construction executive accused of systematic exploitation of veterans and immigrants. Richard Davidson didn't just lose money. He lost contracts, his reputation, and 3 weeks later his wife, who filed for divorce after discovering he had hidden millions in embezzled funds over the years. Tariq al-Rashid, holding his daughter Lena, watched the news in his small but now safe apartment. He had money for insulin, food, and for the first time in years, hoped that justice was more than just an empty word. 6 months later, Tariq stood before a packed conference room at the Veterans Community Center, nervous but determined. At his side, Lena held his hand tightly, now healthy, with rosy cheeks that replaced the sickly pallor of before. "My name is Tariq al-Rashid," he began, his steady voice echoing through the microphone. "And 6 months ago, I was ready to give up. To go to prison just to make sure my daughter could eat." In the front row, Jax Thompson and the Iron Brotherhood watched with quiet pride. "But something impossible happened that night," Tariq continued. "I met men whom society often judges by their appearance, but who possess more honor and compassion than many in expensive suits. They didn't just save me, they taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's survival." With the $100,000 in damages, Tariq had done more than simply survive. He paid off medical debts, secured Lena's insulin supply for 2 years, and used the rest to open a small engineering consulting firm focused on helping minority contractors navigate federal contracts. Richard Davidson, at that point, was facing federal fraud charges. His company had gone bankrupt after 8 former employees sued him for illegal labor practices. His ex-wife had received the mansion in the divorce and immediately put it up for sale, donating part of the proceeds to veterans organizations, a final humiliation that Davidson had to watch helplessly. "But the story doesn't end with me," Tariq told the audience. "With the help of attorney Rebecca Chen and the Iron Brotherhood, we created the Veteran Support Fund, a fund that helps veterans in crisis with medical emergencies, food, and legal assistance." Rebecca Chen stood up to applause. In 6 months, she had sued 4 other companies for similar practices, recovering more than $800,000 for exploited workers. "I learned something crucial," Tariq continued, tears glistening in his eyes. "On the darkest night of my life, when I believed the system had completely abandoned me, I found men who proved that the real system isn't courts or laws, it's people willing to fight when they see injustice." Lena tugged at her father's sleeve, whispering something. Tariq smiled and lifted her up to the microphone. "I want to thank Uncle Jax and the bikers for saving my dad," she said in a clear voice. "He told me that heroes don't wear capes. They wear leather jackets." The room erupted in applause and laughter. After the talk, while Tariq talked with other veterans seeking help, Jax got ready to leave. Tariq caught up with him in the parking lot. "Jax, I'll never be able to thank you enough." "You already have," Jax replied, putting on his helmet. By getting up and fighting. By turning your pain into purpose. By helping others who are where you were. Why did you guys do this? Tarek asked for the 100th time. Really, why? Jax got on his Harley, looking Tarek straight in the eye. Because I grew up watching my father, a black Vietnam veteran, be treated as invisible by a country he defended. Because I know what it's like to be judged by appearance rather than character. And because men like Davidson count on our division, they believe that an Arab veteran, a black biker, an Asian lawyer won't stand together against them. He started the engine. They bet wrong. As the motorcycles roared away, Lena waved frantically. Tarek held her, realizing that the impossible thing wasn't just being saved. It was understanding that family isn't defined by blood or origin, but by who shows up when you need them most. Richard Davidson had bet that power and money always win. Tariq al-Rashid proved that when people from different backgrounds refuse to accept injustice, they create something stronger than any mansion or bank account. They create unshakable community. Sometimes the most powerful justice doesn't come from courts, but from a desperate father meeting 12 bikers in a bar, and all of them deciding they wouldn't turn their backs. Because in the end, true heroes aren't defined by uniforms or titles, but by the simple choice to act when others would remain silent. If this story of community and justice has touched you, subscribe to the channel for more real stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when they refuse to accept that the world must remain unjust.